This is Rodney Ham, Representative in State of Ohio, United States, making a presentation, if not a plea, to the United Nations. I would ask that we look specifically at the Freedom Act, which was a derivation of the Patriot Act, to address terrorism and surveillance issues in a proactive campaign to prevent things like September 11th, tragedy on the soils here in New York. I think that a lot of times as our constituents go through to create legislation, that they do things with votes in mind and campaign contributions. And I think that someone very patriotically, seen with foresight that there were going to be issues with this surveillance enhancement for the legal issues out there that have to do with surveilling terrorism, such as profiling, and instituted Section 3, which was the financing of terrorism from groups out there which could be considered to be hate groups that perpetuate things like attacks. Attacks not only limited to the Twin Towers in New York City, but also attacks on our civilization in campaigns like burning churches back in the 60s, and also attacking our citizens through what I would only be able to say is the inferiority of society, meaning that being representatives of jurisdictions of state or federal law enforcement, thinking that they can operate outside the parameters of the laws that they're here to enforce, as we've seen lately with the claim that the police officers attacked a man for having an affair with one of the police officers' wives in a merciless beating that was addressed by Reverend Jesse Jackson and was addressed eloquently by Reverend Al Sharpton as a stain, really, on the things that Martin Luther King was trying to accomplish and the things that President Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy were trying to accomplish as they reached across the race barriers, trying to build bridges. So here in the state of Ohio, I began a campaign to try to call attention to some of the mishandlings of our Republican Party as a descendant of the great general and the great president Andrew Jackson and my Donelson family, who were critical in the movements to try to get this country started as a democracy, and would be very proud of where we are today, but would still critique it because we'll always be building the United States. We'll always be having to make bridges so that we can reach for our brothers and sisters who have been left behind as capitalism sort of commands, really. We're always going to have the people who struggle, the people who fall in misfortune, and we have to protect them. So in my state, I would like to see Mississippi and Benny Thompson take a good close look, because we have some issues here where there could be a problem at the Golden Lamb in Lebanon, Ohio, known for its campaign contribution dinners, known to be a place where they'll collect the donation monies and put them together in a package for the elite politicians like President Donald J. Trump. And I think as we look at it, we have to be concerned with fellow Democrat Steve Wilson if he's not on board with it because of his background with the prominent Lebanon Citizens National Bank here in Warren County, and some of the photos that we've seen with him and Donald's son, who is the heir, if you will, to all of the Trump businesses and monies. And when he did that, he claimed that he would be taking care of his own campaign financing, but we have to raise an eyebrow when they start asking for PayPal payments to cover the lawyer fees. And it clearly states in there that once you reach that $10,000 threshold, that it needs to be backed up with these solid reports so that we can track it through auditing departments to make sure that there's not campaign financing for terrorism. And if Donald J. Trump was in charge, or even if he was supported by the Ku Klux Klan, which it looks like down here he could have been, we have to go back to 1963. And we have to look at when I-71 was built under then Governor James Rhodes. They called him Dusty Rhodes. And we have to ask questions to people like Bob Taft, who would be one of the senior politicians in Ohio, to take a look at the flow of money from those purchases along 71, which would include local elite Klansmen in Parky Scott. And we have to take a look at if there was benefits to those land purchases when George Hinkle's Lebanon Citizens National Bank allegedly went through and bought up farmers' properties here in the state of Ohio. And as we go down I-71 and take a look at some of the side businesses that took over on the easements that were supposedly purchased by George Hinkle's real estate firm, and him being the head of Lebanon Citizens National Bank, we have to take a look at people like Mark Hazelwood. Mark has had some incidents in the past that would make us raise an eyebrow as to his feelings on the white and black and yellow and orange issues. And then take a look at the Scott Farm out there on 71, as well as things like Carl Linda's Kings Island. I believe Carl Linda started Kings Island. And really see who benefited from those land deals. My information is this. The first gas station built on I-71 came from the founders of Emerald Marketing. And Emerald Marketing is the subsidiary company of Speedway. And Speedway is a subsidiary company of Marathon. And Marathon's vice president, Mr. Ciminarelli, lives right off the Austin Pike Landing. And that land purchase there, when they made the on-ramps to 75, looked very familiar to some of the land purchasing power that was held back then by places like Ohio, which later became BP. A foreign company owns BP. And also the marathons out there, being the parent company of Speedway Racetrack. It's a very vast portfolio, and it's changed a lot in the past few years, with Speedway purchasing Super America and then turning around and purchasing these huge gas stations on the East Coast, only to build their portfolio and then sell to, I believe it was 7-Eleven down in Texas. And to watch some of these things and remembering that, Howard Hughes played a large part. BP was a dominant player in the airline fuel industry, which plays into the hands of General Electric. And you can sort of see how John Rockefeller and his selling off of Standard played into some big power and played into some gigantic money. And if those strings are still attached to people like senators, congressmen, from the Lebanon area and Lebanon Citizens National Bank. I think that we have to really watch closely some of these developments with the Patriot Act and Freedom Act in regards to Mr. Scott, a self-proclaimed Klansman who reports to Stone Mountain, Georgia, and lives off of I-71 in South Lebanon, Ohio. I have been very observant of things like this because of my heritage, being that I'm a descendant in the Donelson family of President Jackson. And a lot of times people will talk to me about things and they will assume that my feelings are a certain way on things like race when they're not. And usually I'll correct them and let them know my educated opinion coming from such a diverse family and having people who are Latino in my family and people who are Black in my family, and both of them being some of the elite soldiers in the United States military. So when it comes to understanding class, I think I understand it well enough. But when it comes to understanding some of the laws and how they ever change, I'm afraid that I'm not an expert. But I think it's worth mentioning, and I think it's worth taking a look at, especially when it comes to things like my friend here in Warren County in Waynesville, Ohio, Charlie Sanders. And Charlie was a tremendous citizenship, civic teacher, if you will, along with his wife here in Waynesville, Ohio. And the more I watch some of the dedications and some of the memorials that go up, not only in Waynesville, but in Warren County in general, I have to wonder if some of these people are sort of sitting back and pushing the envelope, if you will. Because if anyone deserves to be honored for their political contributions here in Waynesville or Warren County, it's my friend who ran against Rob Portman, whose family owns the Golden Lamb, as a Democrat in a heavily Republican county. He ran and became mayor here in Waynesville as a Democrat in a predominantly white town, and overcame challenges his whole life. And I would like to see a memorial built. I have plenty of posts on my broadcast on YouTube if you're interested. I know that people at the United Nations are busy. I appreciate your time. And I would like to salute a soldier, Vietnam veteran Charlie Sanders.